Hi, Jeff Manchester Music. Welcome. This is going to be a discussion, a overview, a more or less review of the Komplete Kontrol Native Instruments keyboard. People on the channel know that I don't often do reviews unless I use the products a lot. I have a tremendous respect for the company and blah, 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 because they take a lot of time to do, and I really like to be thorough about them. People probably know that from the East-West Composer Cloud video that I did. I like to really sort of deep dive, rabbit hole, tunnel vision, all that stuff. We're going to be talking about the Komplete Kontrol Mark II. It's the Komplete Kontrol S61 Smart Keyboard Controller. This is not the controller, this is the box. Can you imagine if I just reviewed I had a brain injury and I thought this was anyway. The keyboard is under me here, and I don't have one of those fancy sort of setups where I have some sort of broadcasting arm sitting and then, a phone on that or a camera and shooting that. So we're going to be very DIY here, but the point will get across how this library works and all that stuff. For people who are new to this series, this is the evolution of the Komplete Kontrol keyboard. It's really an update. Mark II kind of gives it away. There was a Mark I. The Mark II is not really an update or like a refresh or like I said, the next evolution. It's more like a complete, pun absolutely intended, overhaul of the keyboard itself. Now we have rubber pitch and modulation wheels. We have a beautiful crisp display, not unlike Machina's had for a little while now. We have new buttons that control looping, transport, undoing, muting, soloing, all that stuff, everything right from the board in your digital audio workstation if you have Ableton, Logic, GarageBand, or down the road, Cubase. And I think there's another DAW coming out. Not to mention buttons for integration with Machina, which I don't have and don't really care about, so I'm sure it'll tickle someone else's pickle, just not mine. Why don't we start with an overview, a demo of what's sort of capable here, and then we'll go into the pros and cons, the thorns and roses, because I have been playing with this keyboard for a long time now. I've had some trouble getting it started, which I'll talk about a little later, but I've really been composing with this for a while. So it's not a first impressions video. It's unboxed. I've had it for a while, and it's been in my home. I've been trying to make the most of it and trying to find any way I can to make my life easier with this keyboard, which is what it's meant to be about. If you look at the marketing for it, it's like instant creativity, instant inspiration, like at your fingertips, blah, blah, blah. So I really wanted to put it through its paces these last couple of weeks, and I was able to, and so hopefully that's going to be what's conveyed in this review/overview. So let's get started with the overview. I'm going to open something up in Logic, show you what's possible, maybe, we'll sort of crack the surface, and then we'll get into the pros and cons. So let's get started. All right, so once you open your digital audio workstation, if it happens to be Logic, you'll be greeted with something much like this, where you have to choose sort of what you want to do in your session. In this case, software instrument I have selected, and look at that. The instrument is not going to be Kontakt. I repeat, we are not in Kontakt land. More on that later in the Thorns and Roses part. We are going to be using the Komplete Kontrol, app, virtual instrument. It's in AU Instruments over here. Native Instruments, boom, Komplete Kontrol, stereo or multi-out. We're going to go with stereo. So I'm going to press Create. We might get a bit of a spinning beach ball. Let's see how we do. There we go. So now as I navigate over to that track with Komplete Kontrol and press this button, I will get this menu, and it is reflected, and I'm going to show you right now, on the keyboard itself. I don't have to look at the screen to sort of make selections and make choices. I can do it from the keyboard, which is what this series is all about. So, sorry, this is not the fancy, that dude with super long fingers who reviews all the smartphones. It's not that video. I'm going to be holding my phone with one hand, playing the keyboard with the other, and hopefully I'll get my points across. But this is what we see here. Reflected on the super crisp display is the Komplete Kontrol logo. It's because we have parity on the keyboard and in the software through Logic. We have these buttons over here which light up. We have mute and solo. We have ARP, edit, auto, quantize, undo, all things that we do normally in our digital audio workstations we can do from the keyboard itself and get very sort of technical quantization and all that stuff by holding the shift key, which you can look up more in the manual or look up on Native Instruments website to see more about how to use the shift key. But we're going to be very basic here in the overview. Play, record, some transport controls, loop, metro, tempo, stop, and watch what happens when I press browser right here. So this is the sort of game changer according to Native Instruments. When I press this, now we are sort of using the super crisp display to find an instrument and get going, get started. So using this rotary knob right here, these 8 knobs are touch sensitive, I believe. I guess they're rotary encoders. I'll go to all. I can choose from a category, drums, sampled instruments, synthesizers, or other. If I go to all up here, I can go through using this second encoder right here. I can go through all of the products that I happen to have, and there's quite a few. Navigating this takes a little bit of time to get used to, but the keyboard I found is actually super responsive. So if you just sort of like flip through it really quickly like that, you'll get to the end very quickly. And if you want to go a little bit more leisurely, you can do that too, and the screen will sort of respond and update and refresh along with you. So let's go over here to one of my favorite libraries, Albion 5. I'll be honest with you, it's one of my favorites. Not funny at all. And if we go over here, we can see that we have 428 results. And now when I scroll through, just like push, well, the latest push anyway, you get a preview of what these sounds sound like. And we can see that we have the pre-hear setting on right there. So I'll cycle through. And again, these are sort of listed alphabetically, but if I want to, I can zip through them. There's no real lag. It's pretty quick, pretty snappy. Now I can go to all types, which will give me the list of sort of instrument sources, brass, let's say. Now I have the brass articulations. If I go back to this, see if I can get back here. I can go bowed strings, and I can go to subtypes, and we get sort of different categories, I guess. String ensemble would be the subcategory of the bowed strings, and now I can go through the bowed strings subcategory, string ensemble patches. Pretty simple. Let's go back to all types. Let's go to bowed strings, string ensemble. If we want to settle on that one, all I have to do, and these sort of buttons indicate where the top buttons we should press are set and load. I'll press load, and this will load it into Komplete Kontrol, I guess through Logic. I'm not really sure how that works, but the workflow is pretty simple. I'll just press load. It's loading. It's still loading. It's busy loading. And now we're good. And so we see in our digital audio workstation through Logic, we have this, air and ice, and I can play on my keyboard. And the light guide will show me where I can play. And if I change octaves over here, this button right there, we can see the keyboard shift around as I go up and down the octave scale. Right? So you can sort of center and sort of centralize with just a few buttons on the actual keyboard where you play. Now if I play some notes, we can hear things. So again, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to record and just show you how this works. So I will press stop just to make sure that my scrubber, my transport bar, is at the very start of my instrument. And now I'll press shift and record, and this will give me a count in, I believe. Actually, it won't give me a count in. Let's do that again. Pretty simple stuff. Now, I reached for the space bar. I don't have to actually hit the space bar to get things to stop playing and recording. I can just go over here and press stop. And now it's stopped. And I can return to the sort of front of my passage by pressing stop again. And now we go to the very sort of front of that track. But if I want to make sure that my transport bar is at the beginning of the audio event and not just at the beginning of my track, I can go over the rotary encoder over here, and there I just nudge it forward, and I can nudge around this track just like that. If I want, I can loop this section by pressing the loop button, Just go back to the beginning. We can do the metronome. We can quantize it. Press stop over here. We can open up some sort of ARP stuff and scale stuff. What I really want to show you is the automation stuff. I'm going to press loop again to disable that loop. I'm going to bring this over here to the start of that section. And now what I can do is record automation, which I love. And automation happens over here. You'll be shown which parameters you can actually automate. In this case, we have dynamics, expression, and release. I believe if I flip these tabs over here with my finger, we get access to more more parameters to automate. In this case, we don't have much because this patch is a little limited in what is automatable, I believe. And now what I can do is press record, which is going to count it in, and I can use these encoders to add dynamics, expression, whatever. I'm going to just do one sort of hand so that I can do the automation and hold the phone at the same time. Actually, let me start that again. I didn't press automation. Automation. There. Now I'll go back to the beginning. I think it's going to loop from the beginning anyway. Now when I press stop, and what I'm going to do is actually use the mouse for the first time here in this video, right there, and press X on this to get rid of that. When I press A on my keyboard anyway, and press this drop down arrow, it'll show me all the parameters that I automated, which is pretty cool. And they link up very nicely here in color-coded form, dynamics, release, expression. And then I can sort of re-automate stuff. I can go and choose to set up another patch, whatever. That is just sort of a very quick and dirty way of showing you what you can do. I mean, I can also flip this down and solo the track using the buttons here, solo, and you'll see that the solo is engaged in logic, or mute, like that, and the track is muted. There's a lot of stuff that we can do. I'm just trying to give you a very quick sense of what is capable. There's actually one more thing that I want to show you before we leave, and that's this section over here, which I think is pretty impressive, to be honest with you. Notice these buttons over here. We press browse to go to the browser and to choose an instrument. Plugin will bring us back to the plugin and give us mic positions, all that stuff, automatable parameters. Watch what happens when I press mixer over here. This is kind of cool. This screen, if we add more tracks in this session, we can control the gain here, the loudness of our track, and you see that it's mirrored. We get parity with the loudness in Logic. It is a little scratchy, if you notice, when I go up and down here. I'm not really sure why that is, but when I go up and down, we get a kind of jittery effect on the loudness there. And we can also control the stereo out, which is over here. And we have our master fader, which is again a little jittery. I'm not really sure what's going on there. If you look as the the circle moves right and left, it's a little spotty. I'm not really sure what's happening there, but this is something that I've experienced before. And again, some jittery faders. Not sure what's happening there either. But the mixing pane, we can control, I think, panning too, but I just wanted to very quickly show you the gain and just how that works. So I think that's kind of a cool little feature worth at least calling out in this very, very quick and dirty demonstration of the keyboard and Logic. Zen. Okay, here we go. So I have a lot to say about this keyboard, like I said at the top of the video. Now that we have a demonstration, you know what it's all about, you have a sort of taste for what this thing can do. I just want to qualify my thoughts, my genuine, unvarnished opinions, pros, cons, roses, thorns, as we used to call them at camp. I want to qualify by saying that I'm coming from this review and this sort of overview or whatever from the perspective of a composer and a sound designer. There's a lot of people who make beats and do a lot of that kind of work. For them, Machina is probably great, but clearly Native Instruments was trying to talk to another kind of crowd, either from a live performance sort of perspective or from a composing perspective or sound design perspective with a keyboard that keyboard players are used to. I'm sure you could compose on a Machina. I composed on my Ableton Push for a long time. It was fine. But I think this is like, hey, people who like like to play keyboards, I just spat on the pop filter. That's what this is really for, not plosives, but saliva. DNA. Hey, composers, we have something for you. This is for you guys. And I feel like they're listening with different iterations of the keyboard. The Mark I had touch strips for the pitch and mod wheel. Now this new one has rubberized ones, so it's like they're listening to people who play keyboards and all that stuff and changing things. So this is clearly for people like me. I just want to say that. I have a perspective on it, but I know it's for me. In fact, they do videos about composing all the time, and the really curious thing, and this is maybe going to be the introduction to my Roses and Thorns, is the guy they chose to do like a very recent tutorial on like how to compose for strings. I think it was like a neoclassical score or something like that, is not using Komplete Kontrol, the app or the keyboard. Maybe he's using the keyboard, but he's not using it in the way that I think Native Instruments intended. And I think that's very curious and also very indicative of some of the issues that I'm seeing with this keyboard, just playing with it for the last 2 weeks. Let's just stop beating around the bushes and pussyfooting. Let's start with the pros, okay? The good things, the things that I really like about this keyboard. First of all, the build is terrific. This thing feels so sturdy, so solid. I am on my fourth MIDI keyboard with this guy. It is a really wonderful experience to play and to touch, and that's really important. I think instruments are should be more personal than we kind of give them credit for. Instruments are sort of utilitarian now. We have MIDI keyboards that control things in our software. That the instrument itself should have a kind of personality and a chemistry with the artist, and I really feel like I have one with this keyboard. That sounds kind of weird, but the Fitar semi-weighted keys feel excellent. It looks like it's going to be synth action, but it's actually not synth action. It's semi-weighted. It feels great. A lot of people have issues with Fitar and semi-weighted versus fully weighted and synth action. I really feel at home with this keyboard. The encoders, I'm just reading from a list so I don't forget anything. The encoders are super responsive and very sturdy. I've talked about Ableton a lot in this video, but the Ableton push, every time I get a new push, I'm on my second one. The second iteration, push 2. One of the touch sensitive encoders at the very top is a little bit loose, more loose than the other ones. This has the Komplete Kontrol keyboard has a kind of uniformity in build and quality where everything just feels everything was made really well. Everything's sort of perfectly in place. I don't know if they have a Kai doing their keyboards or if they do it themselves or ship it out or whatever, but kudos to the manufacturers. This feels wonderful. It feels like a pro product, which I really like. The transport mute automation, all the controls that allow you to sort of talk to your digital audio workstation, in this case we're just with GarageBand, Logic, and Ableton for now, those were terrific, and they genuinely, for me, kept things creative. So if you are a GarageBand, Logic, or Ableton user, or Cubase, whatever, down the road, they're going to get that ready. I think this is going to be an opportunity for you to be staring less at your screen. I mean, you're going to be looking at another screen that's a little smaller, but that screen really sort of onboards a lot of the controls that you'd be looking at the computer for, and a lot of the stuff you're doing is not looking at screens. You're actually using the I think it's the 4-directional push encoder. You're using the rotary encoders. You're using the mute solo and all that stuff. And you're also using the mixer view with those encoders too. So that I found talking to my digital audio workstation was really great. And the bar, for me anyway, as a former Ableton, I still use Ableton, but as a former Ableton user, was set pretty high with push. So I was pretty happy with the way that things interacted. The other thing is previewing articulations is actually really fun. It's really cool to go through and just listen instead of, pressing a button on the keyboard like you would in Contact. Clicking a patch, playing a thing, that's kind of nice that you get that instant preview and you can just sort of use your ears and use your overall feelings about the patch to guide your intuition as to whether or not that patch is going to work for the cue that you have lined up. And it could be that as you're going down that list, you'll get a little sonic burst of a patch that you hadn't anticipated using, and that's what's going to guide your inspiration for a cue. So that's kind of nice to sort of sit there and just sort of audition and browse different sounds. I really like that. The other pro is that Logic hasn't had anything close to a dedicated control surface for it, like push. So moves into this territory from a company like Native Instruments, even if they're not like Apple, are to me like super exciting. Now I love push. I feel like this keyboard is maybe 2 or 3 generations away from being anywhere close to the way push is integrated with Ableton, and people might be going, well, yeah, that's because push is controlling a digital audio workstation. But I mean, if you think of Contact, or I guess Komplete Kontrol, it's a sampler, and you can control the samplers in Ableton from Ableton push. You can control the mixer from the control keyboard to Logic. You can control the mixer in Ableton. So I'm just saying that there are some similarities and some DNA shared between the two approaches, the keyboard and the push. And I just feel like it's exciting to see things go in this direction and have like finally, some sort of controller that really talks to Logic and Apple, a big Apple product that isn't made by Apple. I think that's cool. It'd be nice if Native Instruments maybe down the road shared their numbers with Apple and said, listen, their response to this has been like totally overwhelming, and maybe Apple buys the hardware part of Native Instruments and works with them. Or maybe they're just like, you know what, you have our blessing. We're going to open up more of our controls to you guys, because there's still some stuff that you can't do that I'm going to get to in the cons with this keyboard that I feel like you should be able to do. But again, it's baby steps. They've just introduced this sort of new functionality, controlling Logic from this big Native Instruments remote control, so it's early days yet. The other pro is if you're blind or visually impaired, I'm told this keyboard is incredible and very accessible. To the extent that it sort of makes creating music for the disabled possible, and probably a lot more fun than having to hover your mouse over, the voiceover, every icon, so the voiceover spits out what it does. I'm told that this is one of the most accessible sort of MIDI controllers out there, and that makes me very happy. I say that as someone who used to work with adults with physical disabilities for a couple of years. So anything that allows everyone to be creative is, I think, a really good thing. So kudos to Native Instruments for that. So now let's get to the cons. Let's just start with the biggest issue that I have, and that's Komplete Kontrol, the app that I showed you. I don't know why they're forcing us to use Komplete Kontrol. I don't understand it. I've been a loyal Native Instruments customer for a really long time. I get the NKS format. That's really cool. Obviously, we want to be looking less at our computer monitors and all the rest of it, but like, I hate to keep coming back to this, but like when I bought Push, I didn't have to like register a new piece of software. I just got Push and everything works seamlessly with their software, all its bells and whistles and effects. And again, people might go, it's a digital audio workstation, Jeff, and it's Ableton. Native Instruments doesn't make Logic. Well, they managed to work with Apple to an extent, and that was something that I really loved about this keyboard. But I just feel like if you're coming from Kontakt, if you're a Kontakt guru and you've used it for a really long time, you're going to be really frustrated with the way that Komplete Kontrol works, because there's a lot of stuff that you can't do, that you don't know if you can do or not, and that it's not just intuitive. You can't just, do all the things that you normally do in Kontakt. And some of the features I found, the light guide, all that stuff, it just wasn't enough to push me over the edge and switch me over to Komplete Kontrol. I'm not a developer. I don't understand why they're making everyone go over to the other side. I don't get it, but to me, Komplete Kontrol just, Kontakt is pretty darn great. It's got its problems, but it's what we're all used to. And having us shift over and transplanting an entire audience over to a brand new piece of software so that we can get access to some of the stuff on the keyboard, I'm not sure if it's worth the jump. It's a bit like telling someone to brush their teeth in a whole new way. I'm 30. It's very difficult for me to change things when I have a workflow and a system that makes sense to me. And I didn't find that the bells and whistles that this controller afforded, not talking about the build, which is great, but just the light guide and all that stuff, I don't think it's enough for me to switch and go to a whole new sort of team. So Komplete Kontrol, I don't understand it. And I almost feel like, and maybe this is getting a little tinfoil hatty conspiracy theory, but like, I feel like Native Instruments is kind of afraid to talk about Komplete Kontrol, not the keyboard and the visuals. They're really happy to talk about that, but if you notice in the marketing, they almost never cut away to the digital audio workstation and the Komplete Kontrol app. So like, I didn't know that you needed to use Komplete Kontrol. I thought you could just use Kontakt. They show the light guide going up and down. They show like, the really cool ARP stuff and like, really cool graphics. Like, let's just watch one. Let's watch one video that they do. Let's watch the first one here. So this is, discover the next generation of Machina and Komplete Kontrol. If we press play on this, we see Machina. We don't see a laptop. We don't see a digital audio workstation. And here comes Komplete Kontrol. There it is. We see the screen. Again, if I didn't know anything about this, I would think like, oh, I get to use this with Kontakt. Nonstop creativity. If I go over to the very, very first one that they did, the first advertisement for this, again, We don't see a laptop. We don't see anything showing that you have to stop using contact. Have a look. There it is, like a nice sizzle video. We see the keyboard. We see the light guide, Complete Control S49. That's all very snazzy, all very cool. Again, they're just showing us like graphics and things that you wouldn't really realize that you couldn't use with contact. So we see rounds here, just skip ahead. Again, we see some cool stuff with automation for the modulation wheel with contour. But again, never a shot of the actual laptop. You know, we see the instruments, and now they're sort of housed here. Okay, so on the one hand, I get it. They want to show off Complete Control, the keyboard, and all the benefits that you get from the keyboard and not having to look at your laptop. That's why the laptop isn't there. I get it. But I wonder if they kept that fact from people because they were worried that everyone would have to migrate from, again, contact to Complete Control. And they wanted to keep that kind of secret. I mean, and maybe some of you guys are thinking like, well, maybe you're not the target audience for this, Jeff. You're not the target audience for this keyboard or whatever. I'm not sure if I am the target audience, but I'll tell you, Native Instruments has a very passionate focus on composers and sound designers, and a lot of their products revolve around those things. And look at this one video that they put out November 8th, I think. It was around composing. It's by a guy who does a lot of videos for Sonokinetic. I'm not calling out him. He's fine, but take a look. They had every opportunity to show you Complete Control, the app, and the keyboard in the context of a composer. Let's have a look at it here. Pop it open.
I'll also play.
Go to the very beginning.
Management's most popular sample libraries. The aim here is to spend.
Introduces himself. It's how to make neoclassical string ensembles with Native. This is an official Native Instruments video, by the way, November 8th.
A few minutes quickly sketching out a piece for orchestra. The dynamics.
What do you notice?
With the string piano a little bit more.
The whole thing is contact. He's not using Complete Control. He's not using he's probably using the keyboard as like a regular MIDI keyboard if he has one. But there's no Complete Control. Nothing.
So I can manipulate do eighth notes with an accent.
And you would think that Native Instruments would be really keen to talk to the audience that they have, especially in the composing world, about this brand new piece of hardware that allows them to instantly be creative and multitask and never have to look at a screen and just focus on their ideas. That is what this keyboard is for. Machina is for beat making, in my view. This is more for live performance and straight up composing, writing. So I'm baffled that Native Instruments doesn't even want to talk about it in a video that appears on their website aimed at composers who use keyboards. I mean, I used my push for a long time to compose, but now I'm so happy to be at home on a 61-key keyboard where I'm doing my stuff. Most, if not all, composers work on a keyboard at one point or another, do the majority of their writing there. Even Junkie XL, who's probably more familiar and at home on a drum machine, uses a keyboard. So I don't get why Native Instruments is so shy about Complete Control and all this stuff. Here's a video, boom. It seems like a no-brainer. Now we get a chance to talk about Complete Control. What occurred to me was maybe he's not using it because the screen on the actual keyboard couldn't be displayed. Maybe there's nothing in it to record its own moves or whatever. Maybe the person doing the video and the voiceover and the demo couldn't get a camera angle just right or whatever. But to me, it feels at best like a missed opportunity to talk about the software and the keyboard, and at worst, a kind of like, oh, we'll just not bring it up. We'll just don't talk about the Complete Control thing, because a lot of composers know about this piece of hardware and the software, and they're not really happy with the integration of it, and they're not happy having to migrate. The next con that I have is that encoders just aren't as efficient as faders. They're just not. They're not as efficient. They're not as smart. What am I talking about? On the Control keyboard, you have rotary encoders all over the place. You do have a mod and a pitch rubber wheel here. You have a touch light strip, which I didn't really talk about. It feels to me like they're just leaving that there because I think a lot of people love the touch light strip, but just to have that sort of option there. But so Tom Dowd, who's like the father of modern audio engineering, actually changed the way that we use consoles today, because we had rotary knobs on consoles, and he realized really quickly that it's so inefficient to have rotary knobs because you're using two hands to do things. When you have faders, linear faders, he figured this out pretty quickly. You can use one hand to control multiple faders at the same time. You can bring up a backup vocalist, a keyboardist, or whatever at the same time with one hand. Why is this important? Why am I bringing this up? Because Native Instruments has decided to go all rotary for everything. What I'm assuming is behind that sort of logic is because maybe with the rotary knobs, they occupy less real estate on the keyboard. You can sort of sandwich things in, get them close to the the display or something like that. But for me, I love faders, and they're efficient. And what they allow me to do is do my automation as I'm composing with, I compose with this hand, with my right hand, and I can do some automation with my left hand. There's a huge gaping hole, in my view, of wasted real estate on the Komplete Kontrol right to the left of the screen and just above the pitch and modulation wheels that could be used to put like light strips, put them back. I don't care. As long as I can use one hand to manipulate vibrato, dynamics, release, whatever. I could do 4, I could do 5, I can get my thumb involved. And just work that way. To me, these rotary knobs, I don't know if I'm the right person for this keyboard, but I feel like I am with all the software that Native Instruments makes for composers and sound designers, but I just don't feel like this instrument is really working for me as a composer. I think I mentioned the fact that not even the light guide reflection is available for people in Kontakt. That seems to be like a really easy thing to do, to just have that there so we don't have to look at the screen. We can just focus on the keys as we're playing in Kontakt. That just felt like a no-brainer to me, and it's not there. Something I just don't understand at all. This creativity, instant, seamless integration. I don't know why they didn't throw a bone to the Native Instruments loyal crowd that have been using Kontakt forever. I had issues, and this is more something I should have brought up with support, but as I was making this video, I had issues where I would play a library on the actual keyboard and do the previewing, and it would be for a different library. I couldn't really figure that out. It stops and starts. I just have to start Komplete Kontrol again. It could be a patch that I haven't updated, but that's something that I noticed. As far as I know, you cannot do a lot of stuff with the Komplete Kontrol keyboard. As far as I know, and I say this and I want to qualify this, as far as I know, I can't add a new track, delete a track, or duplicate a track. Why am I saying I want to qualify this? Well, there might be a way for me to do it, but I should be able to figure out how to do it on my own. And maybe there's only so many balls I can juggle. I'm not that smart, and you can do these things. Let me just turn my email alerts off. But I should be able to figure that out. I don't think you can. I haven't been able to figure it out, adding tracks, duplicating, and deleting. But if I can, it wasn't easy to do, and I don't think it's there. And I that could be because I actually reached out to Native Instruments about this, the deleting and duplicating tracks, not adding a new track, and adding a new instance of Komplete Kontrol to your digital audio workstation. But those two things, and I think Native Instruments said that, what do they say here? I have it written down. There's only so much control that the DAW makers allow them through their API. It could be that they just don't have that control, and maybe it'll be coming in a future updated software where you can just, maybe press the shift key and press new or record or something to get another track in there. But I felt, to me, I always duplicate tracks. I delete tracks. You can undo stuff, but you cannot delete a track. You cannot duplicate it, which is something I do all the time. The other thing you can't do is you can't load stuff that you have in your quick load library in Komplete Kontrol. At least I couldn't figure out how to do it. Maybe you can add folders or whatever, but I have a lot of libraries that aren't, Kontakt libraries, like the full version or whatever. They're housed in the quick load library. Daniel James's Hybrid 2 company does Project Alpha, Project Bravo. They're doing, I think, Project Chaos pretty soon. A lot of those guys live in the quick load, and they're, as far as I know, not accessible from the Native Komplete Kontrol sort of thing. You have to have like one track using Una Corda with the Komplete Kontrol app, and then you have to open another track in Logic with the Kontakt app sampler, and then go to quick load and just have two different things. So when you shift up and down in the tracks, you know, a whole bunch of features will just disappear when you go back to contact. And then when you flip back to your complete control track, the keyboard will probably light up again. So this just seems like really strange that I can't do that. So those were the sort of basic overall cons that I had. I'm still just not sold on this complete control thing. I love the keyboard, I love the way it's built, but I just feel like Native Instruments is just blocking me and preventing me from using it in a way that I feel is natural and in a way that I feel just works for me already. I don't want to go to a whole other system to do the things that I love. And I don't feel like the current system that they have is really worth it. For now, I find that the complete control in its current form and iteration is like a nice to have, kinda. But it's not something I would recommend that everyone have. And I feel maybe a little stupid, but a little duped that in the marketing for it, it wasn't clear that you would need complete control. To me, it just felt like, oh, I've seen all these instruments before in Contact. They must be Contact-based. This is great. I can't wait to use this with Contact. And it was just really stunning to realize that you couldn't do that. I don't think a lot of composers out there really care about the NKS system. I think it's cool if you really dig this keyboard and have a totally different opinion than I did. But I think for a lot of people out there, you know, the Contact works just fine, and it doesn't have to be you know, housed in the complete control sampler. And the last thing that I want to say is that this isn't really, I just have to mention this because I have to sort of shoot some praise Native Instruments way, and also just get a bit cranky. I didn't do this review, not because I was like, I want to spend like 3 months working with this keyboard. I was busy, but I spent literally 3 weeks going back and forth with customer care, trying to sort an issue out because I cannot get this thing to load on my current Mac user account. I just can't. In fact, for the video that I did, I had to, after going back and forth with the incredibly patient and kind people in customer care at Native Instruments, we eventually got it to the point where, like, you see our email chain. It's insane. It's like, it's crazy. I had to create a whole new user account on my Mac, name it something else, and then go in that way. And that is ridiculous because I want to work on one user. It was like a permission issue, and we still don't really know because I still can't make it work in the account that I use every day to record this video and to record all my cues. I had to go in, create a whole new account from the system preferences, make it like a demo user or whatever like that, go in and then resurrect a lot of my patches and, you know, all that stuff in a whole other account and use complete control because my system will not recognize complete control as it is. And the really kind of frustrating thing was, the minute that started working, they just stopped. They just didn't get in touch with me again. And I had to really bug them to be like, hey, yes, complete control is working, but it's not working in the way that works for me. It's not working on my current user account. And I really had to nudge and bug them. And it was only like 2 days ago that they finally got back to me about it. But it was really frustrating because from their perspective, I think they solved the problem. But to me, they solved it with like a big asterisk, a big caveat, which is like not in the way that works for my current workflow. So I'm very thankful that Native Instruments wanted to work with me on this and all this stuff. I really wish that I liked the keyboard more, but in its current iteration, in its current form, again, it's a nice to have. It's a beautifully built keyboard. The hardware is absolutely fantastic. I really hope that someday they'll integrate it with Contact, because until then, I'm not sure if I'm ready to hop aboard the complete control train and just sort of change the way that I brush my teeth, essentially. I can't see the major advantages to it. I'm sorry. Anyway, let me just wrap this up. I have a feeling this video is going to be really, really, really long. Hopefully it was educational and productive and helped you decide what path you want to go down. Thank you so much for watching. Oh my God, I'm tired. Manchester Music, thank you. Bye-bye.